Elia stood in the research hall of the Galactic Academy, staring at the device on her wrist. The small round indicator on her skin was glowing softly, a pale blue light that pulsed with an unfamiliar energy. "Impossible," she whispered, her heart pounding. This was not supposed to happen. For years, she had studied soul indicators, the mysterious marks that appeared when two beings were biologically and spiritually compatible. In her species, the Exenarians, these indicators were sacred. They only activated when someone touched their destined bondmate. The Council of Elders had always said that only certain species could form such connections. Humans were not on that list. And yet the indicator had glowed after she touched a human. She looked up slowly. Standing across from her was Commander Ethan Voss, a human diplomat from the Terran Federation. He had short, dark hair, sharp blue eyes, and an expression of curiosity mixed with concern. He had simply reached out to steady her when she almost dropped a datapad. A simple touch. That was all it took. Now, everything, she believed, was in question. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Elia, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." She swallowed hard. This is not right." Ethan glanced at her wrist, following her gaze. "What is that?" She hesitated. Should she tell him? No, this had to be a mistake. It had to be. Maybe there was some kind of malfunction in her physiology. Maybe she was unwell. She quickly deactivated the indicator, forcing it to fade. Nothing. Just a personal matter. Ethan gave her a look that said he didn't believe her, but he didn't press. "All right, if you say so." Elia turned away, forcing herself to stay calm. She needed answers. The denial of science. That night, Elia locked herself in her private research lab. She ran every test she could on her biosignature. The results all said the same thing. The indicator was real. There was no malfunction, no error. She checked the galactic archives, searching for any record of human-Xenarian compatibility. There was nothing. Not a single case in recorded history. Humans were an adaptable species, but they had never been considered capable of forming such a deep biological bond with Xenarian physiology. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. If this was true, it could change everything. But why had no one discovered this before? Elia knew she had to report this. The Galactic Council needed to know. She sent an urgent request for a scientific review. Within hours, she was summoned to the High Chamber. The Council's denial. The chamber was vast, filled with towering holograms of Xenarian elders and other alien representatives. Elia stood before them, her hands clasped tightly together. She took a deep breath. "I have come to report a discovery," she announced, "one that may challenge our understanding of interspecies compatibility." Elder Veros, a wise but traditional Xenarian, frowned. "Speak." Elia hesitated for a moment, then said it aloud. "A human activated my soul indicator." A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. Some of the elders exchanged glances. Others remained silent, their expressions unreadable. Finally, Elder Veros leaned forward. "That is impossible." "I thought so as well," Elia admitted. "But the indicator does not lie. I ran multiple tests. The results confirm it." The council members whispered among themselves. One of them, an alien from the Kittle species, narrowed his eyes. "This has never happened before. Perhaps your indicator is defective." Elia stiffened. "It is not defective. I have verified my findings. Humans may have a hidden genetic trait that allows them to bond with more species than we previously thought." Elder Veros shook his head. "The human race is unpredictable, chaotic. They lack the stability for such connections." With respect, Elia argued, "We have never truly studied them in this way. We assumed it was impossible, so we never looked." Veros exhaled sharply. "You will not pursue this any further. There is no need to question the natural order." Elia felt her stomach drop. "But this meeting is over," he interrupted. "Forget this foolishness." With that, the holograms flickered and vanished, leaving Elia standing alone in the empty chamber. She clenched her fists. They were afraid. They didn't want to believe it. But she knew the truth, and she wasn't going to stop until she found out why they were hiding it. A warning. As she left the chamber, Elia found Ethan waiting for her outside. "So," he said, crossing his arms, "how'd it go?" "They dismissed it," she muttered. "They refused to even consider the possibility." Ethan sighed. "Typical. Guess they don't like surprises." Elia glanced around. Something felt off. The halls were too quiet. A strange tension filled the air. Then, from the shadows, a cloaked figure appeared. Elia tensed. Ethan's hand drifted toward his sidearm. The figure spoke in a low voice. "You should not have spoken to the council." Elia narrowed her eyes. "Who are you?" The figure ignored her question. "There are things you do not understand, and there are people who do not want this truth to come out." Elia felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" The figure took a step closer. "Be careful, scientist. There are those who will kill to keep this buried." And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the figure was gone. Elia turned to Ethan. "This is bigger than I thought." Ethan gave her a grim nod. "Yeah, and something tells me we're just getting started." She sat in her private research lab, staring at the glowing data on her screen. The warning from the mysterious figure echoed in her mind. There are those who will kill to keep this buried. Why? She replayed the events in her head. Her soul indicator had activated upon touching Ethan, a human. The council had dismissed her discovery without hesitation, and now someone had warned her to stop asking questions. Something wasn't right. Elia took a deep breath. She wasn't going to ignore this. She needed more proof. She activated her holo console and pulled up Ethan's medical records. If humans truly had the ability to bond with Tenarians, there had to be a biological reason. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, running compatibility simulations, analyzing genetic structures. The results were shocking. Humans had an adaptive genetic marker, one that had never been fully studied before. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Their DNA was flexible, capable of forming deep connections with multiple species. This wasn't just rare, it was unprecedented. Elia's breath caught in her throat. No wonder the council wanted this buried. If the galaxy knew humans could bond with different species, it could shift the balance of power. It could unite civilizations in ways never imagined, or start a war. She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She needed to tell Ethan. A dangerous meeting. The next morning, Elia sent a discreet message to Ethan, asking him to meet her in a private location outside the research facility. When he arrived, he looked concerned. "You sounded urgent. What's going on?" Elia glanced around to make sure they weren't being watched. Then she showed him the results on her holopad. "This is why the council rejected my findings. Humans have a genetic trait that allows them to bond with species across the galaxy." Ethan frowned. "That actually makes sense. Humans have always been good at adapting, whether it's technology, culture, or survival. But you're saying this applies to soul indicators too?" "Yes, and not just with Cenarians. If my theory is correct, humans may be compatible with multiple species in ways we've never considered." Ethan exhaled. "That's big. Too big. No wonder they're scared." Elia nodded. "If this information spreads, it could change everything. Alliances, politics, power structures. Or it could make humans a target," Ethan interrupted. His expression darkened. "There are plenty of species who don't like humans having that kind of influence." Elia's stomach tightened. "That's why someone tried to warn me. They don't just want this hidden. They want me silenced." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then we need to be careful. If they come after you, they might come after me too." Elia looked at him. "Are you still willing to help me?" Ethan smirked. I'm already involved. Might as well see where this goes. Elia felt a strange relief at his words. She wasn't alone in this. An unwelcome visitor. Later that evening, Elia returned to her lab to find her research files missing. Her heart pounded as she frantically checked her data storage. Everything was gone. The files on human genetics, the compatibility tests, the indicator activation logs, all erased. A cold dread filled her chest. Someone had hacked into her system. A soft mechanical click echoed in the room. Elia spun around, only to see a Xenarian enforcer standing at the entrance. "Scientist Elia," the enforcer said in a low voice. "You have been warned once, yet you continue down this dangerous path." Elia clenched her fists. "What did you do to my research? It is better that it no longer exists." The enforcer took a step closer. "For your own safety, you will drop this matter. Forget what you have discovered." Elia's pulse raced, but she forced herself to stand tall. "And if I refuse?" The enforcer's eyes narrowed. "Then you will disappear, just like your research." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, from behind the enforcer, a voice rang out. "Yeah, I don't think that's happening." Elia barely had time to react before Ethan stepped into the room, his weapon drawn. The enforcer tensed. "You should not be here, human." Ethan shrugged. "Yeah, well, I have a bad habit of showing up where I'm not wanted." Before the enforcer could respond, Ethan fired a stun pulse. The blast hit the enforcer square in the chest, sending him crashing to the floor, unconscious. Elia stared in shock. "You? How did you know?" Ethan holstered his weapon. "I had a feeling you might be in trouble. Turns out, I was right." Elia exhaled, trying to calm her racing heart. "They erased everything, Ethan. My research is gone." "Then we start again," he said firmly. "But this time, we don't do it alone." Elia looked at him, realizing something. Ethan wasn't just helping her, he was protecting her. And for the first time since this all started, she felt like she had a real chance at uncovering the truth. But they would have to move fast. Because now, they weren't just searching for answers. They were running for their lives. Elia's heart pounded as she and Ethan rushed through the dimly lit corridors of the Galactic Academy. The unconscious enforcer wouldn't stay down forever. They had to get out. Ethan led the way, his movements quick and precise. "We need to find a safe place before more of them show up," he said, glancing back at her. Elia's mind was spinning. Her research was gone. The council was trying to silence her. And now she was a fugitive in her own home. How did they erase everything so fast? She whispered, her voice filled with frustration. "I had security layers on my files." Ethan frowned. "That means someone high up was involved. Someone with direct access to your systems." Elia clenched her fists. The council. They reached the outer halls, where few researchers worked at night. Ethan slowed down, pressing himself against the wall. He motioned for Elia to do the same. "We need a way off this station," he murmured. Elia's pulse quickened. "Leave. You think we can solve this while the council is breathing down our necks?" he asked. "If we stay, they'll either imprison you or worse." Elia hesitated. She had never thought about running before. Her entire life had been dedicated to science. But now, she swallowed hard. "Where would we go?" Ethan's lips curved into a smirk. "I know a place." The escape. Ethan led her through an old maintenance tunnel beneath the research facility. The walls were covered in dust, and the air was stale. "This leads to the lower docks," Ethan explained. "Security doesn't check this area often." Elia kept close behind him. "And what exactly is at the lower docks?" "My ship." She stopped in surprise. "You have your own ship." Ethan chuckled. "What, you think humans just rely on others to get around? I like to be prepared." Elia rolled her eyes but followed him. At least one of them had thought ahead. They moved quickly, reaching a small access hatch. Ethan peeked through, checking the area. Then he gestured for her to follow. The docking bay was almost empty, except for a few cargo workers. In the distance, Elia spotted a sleek black spacecraft docked near the exit. "That's yours?" she asked. Ethan grinned. "Impressive, huh?" Before she could respond, a voice echoed from behind them. "Stop right there." Elia spun around to see 3 enforcers armed with stun rifles. Ethan reacted instantly, grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the ship. "Run." Elia sprinted beside him as energy blasts sizzled through the air. Alarms blared across the docking bay. They reached the ramp of the ship just as another blast nearly hit Elia's leg. Ethan turned, fired a quick shot, and hit one of the enforcers in the chest. "Inside now," he ordered. Elia dashed into the ship, and Ethan followed, sealing the hatch behind them. He ran to the cockpit and activated the engines. The ship roared to life. "Hold on," Ethan shouted. The ship lifted off the platform, spinning toward the exit. Outside, security forces were scrambling to block them. The docking bay's blast doors began to close. "We're not gonna make it," Elia cried. Ethan smirked. "Watch this." He slammed a button, and the ship's thrusters blasted forward at full speed. The ship slipped through the narrowing gap just before the doors shut behind them. Elia let out a shaky breath. "That was reckless." Ethan laughed. "Yeah, but it worked." She couldn't argue with that. The hidden truth. Once they were safely in deep space, Elia collapsed into a chair. Her body was still shaking from adrenaline. Ethan leaned against the control panel. "So, where do we go from here?" Elia rubbed her temples. "I need more data. If we can't access my research, we have to find another source." Ethan nodded. "And where do we find that?" Elia hesitated. Then she whispered, "The Lost Archives." Ethan frowned. "The what?" She looked up at him. "The Lost Archives are a hidden database. It's said to contain ancient knowledge that predates the Council's rule. If anyone ever recorded a case like mine before, it would be there." Ethan crossed his arms. "And I'm guessing the Council doesn't want anyone snooping around there." Elia gave him a pointed look. Ethan sighed. "Of course. Why would this be easy?" She leaned forward. "Ethan, this could be the key. If we find proof that humans have bonded with other species before, we can expose the Council's lies." Ethan studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, let's find these lost archives." But just as he set their course, the ship's warning system beeped. Elia looked at the screen. Her blood ran cold. A fleet of ships had just entered their sector, and they were headed straight for them. Alarms blared across the cockpit. Red warning lights flashed as Ethan stared at the radar screen. 5 ships, armed, and closing in fast. Elia's breath caught in her throat. "They found us." Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. No kidding. The enemy ships were moving in formation, cutting off any escape routes. The lead vessel sent a transmission. "Unknown vessel, power down, and prepare to be boarded." Ethan scoffed. "Yeah, that's not happening." Elia's hands trembled. "What do we do?" Ethan's eyes gleamed with determination. "We run." He punched the thrusters, and the ship lurched forward at incredible speed. The enemy fleet reacted instantly. The lead ship fired a warning shot, a bright blue energy blast that barely missed them. The rest of the ships followed, spreading out like a deadly net. Elia gripped the seat. "They're trying to surround us." Ethan's fingers flew over the controls. "Not if I have anything to say about it." The ship dived downward, twisting sharply to the right. The sudden maneuver threw off the attackers, causing 2 of them to nearly collide. But the other 3 stayed on their tail. The ship shook violently as laser fire rained past them. Ethan gritted his teeth, weaving through the chaos. Elia frantically searched the ship's systems. "We don't have weapons strong enough to fight them." "Then we don't fight," Ethan muttered. "We outsmart them." A daring plan. Elia's mind raced. They needed an escape plan, and fast. Then she noticed something on the star map, an asteroid field. She pointed at the screen. Ethan, look. If we enter that asteroid belt, we might lose them. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Might. It's better than nothing. Ethan smirked. I like the way you think. He pulled the ship into a sharp turn, heading straight for the asteroid field. The enemy ships hesitated for a moment, then followed. As soon as they entered, massive rocks loomed around them. Some were spinning dangerously, others smashing into each other. One wrong move, and they'd be crushed. Elia's heart pounded. This is crazy. Ethan grinned. No, this is fun. He jerked the controls, sending the ship through a narrow gap between two colliding asteroids. One of the pursuing ships wasn't fast enough. It crashed into a floating rock and exploded. Elia gasped. That worked. Ethan shrugged. Told you I was good. The remaining ships continued their pursuit, dodging debris as best they could. Ethan twisted and turned, using the chaos of the asteroid field to his advantage. Another enemy ship got too close to a spinning rock and was ripped apart on impact. 2 down, Ethan muttered. 3 to go. Elia's fingers flew across the control panel. She activated the ship's sensor jammer, creating a field of interference. Ethan, now, take us into that cluster. Fast. Ethan didn't hesitate. He boosted toward a dense pocket of asteroids where signals would be scrambled. The ship vanished into the rocky maze. The remaining enemy ships tried to follow, but their scanners went haywire. Confused and unable to track them, the enemy ships hesitated. Then Ethan made his move. He cut the engines, letting the ship drift in total silence. The enemy pilots, unable to see or detect them, grew frustrated. One of them turned too sharply and clipped an asteroid. Another explosion lit up the darkness. Elia watched in awe. We're winning. Ethan grinned, one step at a time. The last 2 enemy ships, unable to find them, finally gave up. They turned and flowed back into open space. Elia exhaled in relief. We did it. Ethan smirked. Told you I had a plan. A hidden location. Now safe, Ethan guided the ship toward their next destination, the Lost Archives. As they exited the asteroid field, Elia checked the star charts. We're still a few hours away. Ethan leaned back. Good. Gives us time to prepare. Elia nodded, but her mind was still restless. Ethan, do you think the council knew we'd head here? Ethan's expression darkened. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. Elia shivered. The council had gone to extreme lengths to erase her research. What if they had already erased the information in the Lost Archives too? She pushed the thought away. They had come too far to stop now. Ethan glanced at her. Get some rest. You've been running on adrenaline since this started. Elia hesitated, then nodded. She had been exhausted. All right. Wake me if anything happens. Ethan smiled. You got it. As Elia closed her eyes, she couldn't help but wonder. What if the Lost Archives held more secrets than they were ready for? The ship's engine hummed steadily as they traveled deeper into uncharted space. Elia sat in the cockpit, her eyes focused on the star map in front of her. They were getting closer to their destination, the Lost Archives. Ethan had been quiet for a while, his hands lightly gripping the controls. Elia noticed the tension in his shoulders. He was still alert, watching their surroundings. The escape from the enemy fleet had been a close call, but it wasn't over yet. Do you think we lost them? Elia asked softly, breaking the silence. Ethan nodded but didn't look at her. For now, but they'll be back. The council doesn't give up easily. Elia glanced out the window. The stars outside were bright and endless, but her mind was racing. The council would come after them. They knew too much now. Elia's thoughts returned to the Lost Archives. The rumors surrounding it were enough to make anyone cautious. Some said it was a hidden treasure of knowledge, filled with ancient technologies, historical data, and forbidden research. Others claimed it was a myth, something to scare those who asked too many questions. But Elia had no choice but to believe in it. She had to. She had to find the answers, even if it meant risking everything. The hidden entrance. Elia's eyes shifted to the display as they entered a new star system. The coordinates led them to an uninhabited planet, its surface covered in dense forests and towering mountains. From space, the planet looked peaceful, but Elia couldn't shake the feeling of unease settling in her chest. Ethan turned the ship's engines down to a low hum as they approached the planet's surface. "We're here," he said quietly. "Get ready." Elia stood, grabbing a small data pad and checking her equipment. "I'll be ready. But I have to ask, how do we know this place is really the Lost Archives?" Ethan glanced at her, his eyes narrowing with determination. "I've been to places like this before. Trust me, it's real." Elia nodded but couldn't shake her worry. If the archives were really here, how much would they reveal? And what if they weren't prepared for what they found? As the ship touched down on the surface, Elia felt the weight of the moment. The air outside was thick with humidity, and the atmosphere had a strange, almost mystical feel to it. The forest around them was dark and quiet, except for the occasional sound of distant creatures. Ethan stepped out of the cockpit first, scanning the area. "Stay close," he said, his voice low. Elia followed him as they walked toward a cliffside hidden by thick vines and trees. She could barely make out the entrance to a cave carved into the mountain. There was no sign or markings, just a natural-looking opening, barely noticeable unless you knew exactly where to look. "This is it," Ethan said, pointing to the entrance. "The Lost Archives are inside." Elia hesitated for a moment. "How do you know no one else is here?" Ethan gave her a small smile. "If anyone else knew about it, they would have already come. Trust me, we're the first in a long time." With that, they stepped inside. The ancient vault. The cave was cool and damp, and the light from their torches flickered against the walls. As they ventured deeper, the passage became wider, revealing strange symbols etched into the stone. The symbols were ancient, far older than anything Elia had ever seen. Elia's heart raced. These symbols, they're not from any known language. This place is far older than I thought. Ethan glanced at her. "What are you thinking?" Elia shook her head, eyes scanning the walls. "I don't know. These markings, they're important. Whoever built this place wanted to keep it hidden." As they walked further, the air grew thicker with dust, and the walls glowed faintly with an eerie light. The deeper they went, the more it felt as though they were crossing into another world, one long forgotten by the galaxy. Finally, they'd reached a massive door, an ancient vault. The door was made of heavy metal and covered in the same strange symbols. It looked almost impenetrable. Elia approached it slowly, her fingers brushing against the door. "How do we open it?" Ethan stepped forward, examining the door. "There has to be a mechanism, some kind of trigger." He pressed a series of symbols on the door's surface. A low hum filled the air. And then, the door began to slide open. Elia's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the Lost Archives. As the door fully opened, they were greeted by a chamber filled with rows of ancient data consoles. The room was dark, but the soft glow from the consoles illuminated the space. The air was thick with the scent of old technology, and the dust settled in every corner of the room. Elia felt a wave of awe wash over her. She had been right. The Lost Archives were real. She rushed forward to the nearest console, her fingers trembling as she activated the interface. A holographic screen appeared in front of her, filled with data from centuries ago. Ancient texts, star maps, and research logs. But something caught her eye. A file labeled Human Compatibility. Her heart skipped a beat. Was this it? The information she had been searching for? Elia quickly opened the file. What she saw sent a chill down her spine. The data was extensive. Reports detailing the genetic compatibility of humans with dozens of alien species, including Cenarians. But there was a darker truth hidden beneath the data. The file revealed that the Council had been hiding the truth for years. Humans were not just compatible with other species, but they were the key to uniting the galaxy. Elia's mind raced. This was what the Council had been hiding. This was the real reason they had tried to silence her. But now she had the truth, and she wasn't going to let it go. Elia's hands trembled as she scrolled through the data. The screen before her flickered slightly, illuminating her shocked expression. The Council had been lying. Humans were not just another species in the galaxy. They were unique. Their DNA contained a mysterious property, something that allowed them to bond with and enhance the abilities of other species. The research logs spoke of experiments, hidden studies, and records dating back thousands of years. This changes everything, Elia whispered. Ethan leaned over her shoulder, scanning the screen. His usual cocky attitude was gone, replaced by a look of disbelief. So, you're saying humans aren't just compatible with other species. They're the missing piece. Elia nodded. It's why my indicator activated when I touched you. The Council knew about this all along. They erased this knowledge from history. She turned to Ethan, her voice urgent. If this gets out, the entire galaxy will change. Ethan exhaled. That explains why they're after us. They don't just want to hide the truth. They want to eliminate it. Elia clenched her fists. We can't let them. But before she could say another word, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the chamber. The ground beneath them vibrated. Dust fell from the ancient walls. Ethan spun around, hand reaching for his blaster. What was that? Elia quickly checked the console. A red warning flashed across the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Security protocols engage. Her stomach dropped. Oh no. A desperate escape. The chamber came to life around them. Mechanical arms extended from the walls, and automated turrets unfolded from hidden panels. The once-dead technology was waking up. Ethan grabbed Elia's wrist. Time to go. Now. But Elia hesitated. The data. We need to download it. She frantically connected her datapad to the console, transferring as much information as possible. A countdown appeared on the screen, -60 seconds until lockdown. Ethan swore under his breath. Hurry, Elia. The turrets locked onto them. A red laser sight traced across Ethan's chest. Without thinking, Elia lunged at him, pushing him aside just as the first turret fired. A bolt of energy sizzled past them, striking the ground where Ethan had stood. Ethan rolled to his feet. Okay, that's enough excitement for today. Elia's datapad beeped. Download complete. She yanked it from the console and sprinted toward the exit. Ethan followed, firing a few shots at the turrets to slow them down. The chamber shook violently as the lockdown sequence progressed. The doors were starting to close. Faster, Ethan shouted. They ran as the heavy metal doors began sliding shut. The gap was shrinking. If they didn't make it, they'd be trapped inside forever. Ethan threw himself forward, sliding under the door at the last second. Elia was right behind him, but she tripped. Ethan's heart stopped as he saw her fall. The door was almost shut. With a roar, he reached out and grabbed her hand, yanking her through just as the door slammed shut behind them. They tumbled onto the ground, gasping for breath. Elia clutched her datapad like it was her lifeline. We did it, she whispered. Ethan let out a breathless laugh. Yeah, barely. The betrayal. They hurried back to the ship, adrenaline still pumping through their veins. As they strapped in, Elia transferred the data to the ship's computer. The files were massive, too much information to process at once. Ethan started the engines. We need to get out of here before the Council's goons show up. Elia nodded, but something nagged at her. The Council had spent centuries hiding this information. Would they really leave the archives unguarded? Her suspicions were confirmed minutes later. Just as they lifted off, another ship appeared on the radar. Ethan cursed. Incoming. The ship wasn't a Council cruiser. It was a bounty hunter's vessel. Elia's blood ran cold. They sent mercenaries after us. The communicator crackled to life. A deep metallic voice spoke. Elia, Ethan, surrender the data now, and we'll let you live. Ethan smirked. Yeah, sure. Let me think about it. No. He jerked the controls, sending the ship into a steep dive. The bounty hunter's vessel immediately gave chase, firing plasma bolts toward them. Elia gritted her teeth. We need a way out. Ethan's eyes darted across the control panel. Hang on. I have an idea. He cut the ship's main power. For a terrifying moment, the ship went completely silent. No engines, no lights, just the vast emptiness of space. The bounty hunter's ship rushed past them, unable to track their position without a power signature. Elia's heart pounded in her chest. Did that actually work? Ethan grinned. Told you I'm good. He restarted the engines and blasted away at full speed. The bounty hunter's ship tried to follow, but by the time they recovered, Ethan and Elia were already gone. A dangerous decision. As they entered deep space, Elia finally allowed herself to breathe. They had the data. They had escaped. But now came the hardest part, deciding what to do next. Ethan leaned back in his seat. So, what's the plan? Elia stared at the screen, her mind racing. The truth about humanity's importance was now in their hands. If they released it, the Council would hunt them to the ends of the galaxy. But if they kept it hidden, the truth would stay buried forever. Elia's fingers hovered over the control panel. The people deserve to know, she whispered. Ethan watched her carefully. Then let's make sure they hear it. Elia took a deep breath and pressed the broadcast button. The truth was about to be revealed to the entire galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again. Elia's heart pounded as she watched the broadcast counter tick upward. The transmission was spreading across stations, planets, and deep space colonies. The truth about humans was no longer a secret. Ethan leaned over the control panel, eyes sharp. It's working. We're getting signals from across the network. Elia swallowed. And the Council. Ethan's expression darkened. They'll come after us with everything they have. Elia knew he was right. The Galactic Council had ruled with lies for centuries. They wouldn't let the truth spread so easily. Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared. Incoming Council fleet detected. Elia turned to the screen. Multiple ships were closing in fast. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. They're here. Elia took a deep breath. Then we fight. The battle for truth. The first Council warship opened fire. Plasma beams streaked through space, barely missing Elia's ship. Ethan swore. Hold on. He pulled the ship into a sharp spin, dodging incoming fire. Elia quickly activated the ship's defense systems. We need to get past them, she shouted. Ethan smirked. Leave it to me. He flipped a series of switches. The ship's thrusters roared, pushing them toward an asteroid field nearby. Elia's eyes widened. You're taking us into the asteroids. Ethan grinned. They won't follow us in there. The Council ships hesitated. The asteroids were massive, moving unpredictably. A single wrong move could destroy a ship. Ethan weaved through the massive rocks, using them as cover. The Council fleet struggled to keep up. Elia quickly checked the status of the transmission. The broadcast was still live. People were seeing the truth. Then, a new message flashed on the screen. Incoming transmission. Unknown source. Elia frowned. Someone's trying to contact us. Ethan dodged another asteroid. Put it through. A holographic figure appeared. A resistance leader. Elia recognized her immediately. Captain Leora of the Free Colonies. We've seen your broadcast, Leora said. And we believe you. Elia's chest tightened with hope. Then help us. The Council is after us. Leora nodded. You're not alone. Stand by for reinforcements. Ethan grinned. I like her already. The rebellion rises. Moments later, dozens of ships emerged from hyperspace. The Resistance fleet had arrived. The Council warships turned their focus to the new threat. A massive battle erupted in space. Fighters weaved between capital ships, weapons blazing. Aelia and Ethan used the distraction to escape the asteroid field. Lyra's voice came through the communicator. "We'll hold them off as long as we can. Get to safety and keep spreading the truth." Aelia hesitated. She didn't want to run, but she knew Leora was right. Ethan pulled the ship toward deep space. "We'll be back," he promised. Leora smiled. "I'm counting on it." The battle raged on behind them as they jumped into hyperspace. A new beginning. As the stars stretched around them, Aelia finally allowed herself to breathe. They had escaped. Ethan glanced at her. "You did it. The truth is out there now." Aelia nodded, her heart swelling with determination. "It's not over yet. The Council will fight to keep control." Ethan smirked. "Then we fight back." She met his gaze. "Together." He nodded. "Always." Aelia looked at the screen. Messages were pouring in. Across the galaxy, people were rising up against the Council. The truth had sparked a revolution, and this was only the beginning.